Do you think he's a pathfinder?
Oh, yeah. I think he's a maverick.
Oh, it's very kind of you to say such a thing. Yes, I've been looking for the path all my life.
It's been many years since Pierce first opened up about his wife's heartbreaking medical diagnosis, a moment that touched hearts around the world. Throughout her long battle, he remained by her side, showing strength, love, and unwavering support. But now, he's saying goodbye. And it's left fans everywhere stunned. The question on everyone's lips is, why now? What has changed? Has something happened to her? Or is Pierce the one facing something unexpected? Join us as we unveil the shocking details behind Pierce's tragic goodbye. When the world stopped moving. When Pierce Brosnan married Cassandra Harris, he was so sure that he'd found his forever partner. She was elegant, regal, and extremely delightful. An Australian actress with great talent in the industry, Cassandra became not just his wife, but his true mentor. Despite their world of flashing cameras and red carpets, she gave him a home. For a while, it was perfect. They raised her 2 children as one loving family. Then they had a son together, Sean. The kids got along and the family of 5 enjoyed several vacations. Life looked like a dream. But that dream began to crack in the most unforgiving way. It started small in India during one of their work vacations. She felt fatigued in a strange way and had a swollen stomach. Cassandra brushed it off, like most strong women do. But beneath the surface, her body was already at war. When they returned back to London, she was diagnosed with the same disease that had taken her own mother, ovarian cancer. It felt like a cruel echo. The disease wasn't just a simple tumor or shadow. It had spread all through her insides. Their whole world took a pause. And Pierce, the man known for charm and cool composure, was suddenly powerless. Cassandra, however, even in the situation, remained tough as a nut. She questioned every medication and only took what she was sure of. Brosnan once said that he was the quiet party, watching, loving, and being there for her. And he did just that. He stayed by her side through every treatment, every surgery, every whispered hope. He carried the weight of the house, the kids, and his work, but he never left her bedside longer than he had to. 2 years in, they moved to Malibu, and Cassandra poured her love and time mid-treatments into making their home into a sanctuary, as if to mask the fact that it was a battlefield. By December of 1991, Cassandra's body had grown too tired. The couple realized that they were now at the end. Pierce felt helpless, angry, and confused, but Cassandra, as usual, comforted him. She said, "Please, darling, don't worry. It's just a life winding down." After 4 years of treatment, including 8 surgeries and a year and a half of chemo, Cassandra passed away next to her first son and husband, with Charlotte on the phone. She was 43 years old. Brosnan later said the pain of losing her was indescribable. It didn't just change him, it hollowed him out. Grief lived in his bones. The world kept calling him James Bond, but inside, he was just a man learning how to breathe again without her. And even in the years that followed, her memory stayed everywhere. In Charlotte's laugh, in family photos too painful to frame, in the quiet places where her perfume used to linger, especially in where she used to sit, under the trees. He once said, "There is an incredible cruelty in loss. You feel it like a weight. It changes the shape of your soul." He kept going. He kept working. But part of him remained frozen in that hospital room, watching the woman he loved more than anything fade into a silence that words could never fill. How did such a deep, so all-consuming love begin, that even death couldn't unweave it? The real Bond. Long before Pierce Brosnan became a household name, he walked into a room and met a woman who changed everything. A woman who made him the actor, the man and father that he is. Cassandra Harris was unlike anyone Pierce had ever met. Born Sandra Colleen Waits in Sydney, Australia, she had the kind of presence that made people pause, poised, elegant, with an almost regal air, a trace of her upbringing that tied back to aristocratic bloodlines. She had studied at the National Institute of Dramatic Art and already earned her place in the industry, eventually becoming a Bond girl in For Your Eyes Only. But when they would meet through a friend, it wasn't her career that piqued Pierce's interest. It was her stunning beauty. He was dressed ridiculously as he was on set playing the role of Michelle in Philomena. Yet, as she walked in, he fell in love with her. Cassandra had noticed his looks, and she later said she wasn't interested in him. But soon enough, she discovered their shared love for acting, music, and books. And as Cassandra once said with a smile, "Once we started talking, we never stopped." The couple said their vows on the 27th of December, 1980. It was a private ceremony, surrounded by only close friends and family and away from the paparazzi of the movie industry. When Pierce and Cassandra married, he didn't just become a husband, but also a father to her two children, Charlotte and Christopher. Both were from Cassandra's previous marriage to actor Dermot Harris, who had passed away in 1986. You will always find Pierce speaking of his deep love for them. As a boy who grew up lonely, he took his responsibilities as a father very seriously. Even when fame began to find him, Pierce remained centered in his wife. She read his scripts. She calmed his nerves. She told him with gentle certainty that he was meant for something bigger. And somehow, he believed her. He said once, "Cassie gave me roots and wings." It was a rare kind of love, and it made what they had to endure so unfair and heartbreaking. But what kind of childhood makes a man cling so tightly to love when he finally finds it? The kid before the spotlight. Pierce Brendan Brosnan was just a boy from Navan, Ireland, quiet, solitary, and aching for something solid. He was born in 1953, the only child of May and Thomas Brosnan. But when he was just a baby, his father walked away without explanations or visits, just absence and a deafening silence. Pierce could not even remember what his presence felt like. His mother, determined to survive, moved to London for work as a nurse, leaving young Pierce in the care of his grandparents. They took care of him until they both passed away. Aunts and uncles took him in, passing him from one home to another like a borrowed coat. There was love, but not always warmth or closeness. He said later that he was a lonely child, not in the dramatic sense, but in the quietly crushing way that makes you stare too long out of windows, wondering why your life feels so empty. At age of 11, he was finally reunited with his mother in London. But the transition wasn't easy. He had an Irish accent in an English school and a name no one could pronounce. He became the boy who didn't quite fit anywhere. Art became his safe space. He was always drawing, imagining, disappearing into worlds of his own making. He left school as a 16-year-old kid with no grand plan or no roadmap, just a vague sense that he wasn't meant to fade into the background. He tried commercial art, even learned how to be a fire eater for a circus act. Life was chaotic, but Pierce was trying to make it all make sense. One day, while working backstage at a theater, he watched a rehearsal and felt something spark. The stage called to him. The stories, the way the actors communicated their emotion, felt like home in a way nothing else ever had. He joined a theater group and auditioned for the Drama Centre in London, and was accepted. He went on to attend the school for 3 years, learning all he needed to use his voice to convey emotions on film. And that voice would soon echo across television screens and movie theaters around the world. He would later meet his wife Cassandra, who would push him to break boundaries as an actor. Even though he lost her, fate wasn't done, and his greatest heartbreak was still ahead. After all, how does a father say goodbye to a child when the world seems to be falling apart all over again? The goodbye that broke him again. Charlotte was more than just a daughter to Pierce Brosnan. She was a bright light in his life and a living connection to his late wife, Cassandra. Like her mother, Charlotte was drawn to the arts and pursued a career in acting, following in the footsteps of her family's love for storytelling. She shared a lifelong partnership with Irish actor Alex Smith, and together they had 2 children, a son and a daughter, who brought joy and meaning to their lives even during the darkest times. In a deeply moving and private moment, Charlotte and Alex married just days before her death, showing the strength of their unbreakable bond and the love that carried them through the hardest fight. In the early 2000s, Charlotte was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, the same cruel and inherited disease that had taken Cassandra years before. The parallels were heartbreaking. Even more painful was the fact that Charlotte's children were the same ages she and her brother Christopher had been when their mother died, a stark reminder of the family's heartbreaking cycle. Watching Charlotte face the same devastating illness reopened wounds he thought were healing. He described those years as a storm without shelter, with every hospital visit, test, and treatment a painful reminder of life's fragility. The family's grief hung over every moment, public and private, as Pierce's career took a backseat to his role as protector and dad. Pierce will later go on to advocate for early detection of ovarian cancer, a malignant invader that kept breaking his heart. After a tough battle, Pierce found himself saying goodbye to his girl, Charlotte, who had her final rest in 2013 at the age of 41. In interviews, Pierce has spoken openly about the unbearable pain of losing his daughter. The heartbreak was not only personal loss, but a profound reckoning with fate and a family legacy shadowed by illness. He called the disease insidious. Behind dimmed lights and closed doors, Pierce was not a spy, but a father battling heartbreak beyond the screen. His daughter's illness and loss cast a shadow over everything, reshaping how he viewed success and family. How did playing one of the most iconic roles in cinema change a man wrestling with such personal grief? And what did it truly cost him? The piercing rise of Pierce. Pierce didn't just launch into stardom by becoming James Bond. He had, prior to that, carefully wielded each building block to build a strong and respected career. He gained his first international attention in the 1980s as the suave private investigator Remington Steele in the television series of the same name, which ran from 1982 to 1987. His charm, good looks, and effortless charisma made him stand out, and the role even caught the attention of Bond producers years before he was cast. Throughout the 80s and early 90s, Pierce starred in several films and TV movies, including The Fourth Protocol in 1987, Mr. Johnson in 1990, and The Lawnmower Man in 1992, showing his range beyond romantic or spy roles. However, when Pierce Brosnan finally stepped into the world of James Bond in 1995, it marked a turning point in his life and career. Taking on the role of the legendary British spy was a dream he had shared with his late wife. So it was mixed feelings when he got the role, but couldn't share it with the woman who made it happen. This role also came with a challenging pressure. Pierce wasn't just playing a character. He was the 5th man to inherit a global legacy that had been shaped by iconic actors before him: Sean Connery, Roger Moore, and even his friend Timothy Dalton, who had gotten the role instead of him only a few years earlier on. When Pierce came out as 007 in 1995 in GoldenEye, a film that not only relaunched the franchise after a 6-year break, but also introduced a more modern Bond, all his fears became needless. His smooth charm combined with a rugged edge instantly won over critics and fans alike, and the franchise that was close to permanent shutdown sprang up again. He saved Bond. For the next decade, Pierce starred in 4 more Bond films: Tomorrow Never Dies in 1997, The World Is Not Enough in 1999, Die Another Day in 2002, and the unofficial The Matador in 2005, which, while not Bond, showcased his range as an actor. Each film pushed him physically and mentally. Pierce did 90% of his own stunts, sometimes risking his life in the process. On the set of Die Another Day, he narrowly escaped serious injury during a skydiving scene when a parachute malfunction occurred. Despite these close calls, Brosnan's commitment to authenticity made the movies much more real, driving in constant viewers. He made the film's box office hits, earning him millions and solidifying his place as one of Hollywood's most bankable stars. At his peak during the Bond era, Pierce Brosnan's net worth was estimated to be over $70 million, which goes to show the huge impact the role had on his career and financial success. As the last scenes of Bond wrapped, Pierce was a man who had faced danger countless times on screen, yet somehow missed the warning signs closing in on his own career. The threats he saw with crystal clarity in his roles, blurred when it came to the life he was living. How could a man so skilled at spotting danger overlook the storm gathering over his life? The broken Bond. Despite his global successes, the world of Hollywood is unforgiving and unpredictable, and even a star of his magnitude is not immune to its shifting tides. However, this was not a regular layoff or replacement. It was betrayal to a man who had given the franchise everything. When he first landed the part in the mid-1990s, he was still grieving the loss of his first wife, Cassandra. The role of 007 gave him purpose. He would remember just how much his wife wanted the role for him, so he had to make sure she was proud of him whenever he was on set. He dedicated himself completely to the franchise, blending strength and vulnerability in a way that fans had never seen before. He was Bond for a whole generation. But after 4 films and nearly a decade of carrying the franchise, everything changed with a single phone call. It was short, just 46 seconds. That's all it took to end a chapter that had redefined his career. The producers had called to inform Pierce that he was done as James Bond, a cold and juvenile move. He didn't see it coming. For years, Pierce had openly expressed his desire to continue playing Bond. He believed he had one more film in him, maybe even 2. The fans agreed. The films had been financially successful, with Die Another Day earning over $431 million worldwide. But none of that seemed to matter. Behind closed doors, the wheels had already been turning. Producers had been meeting with other actors for nearly 2 years, leaving him in the dark. He would later describe the decision as a kick in the teeth. And it wasn't just the role that disappeared, but his entire image. Ironically, he became too Bond for other studios. Casting directors began pulling back. His asking price, once $12 million per film, dropped to just $3 million almost overnight. He had been picked, used, and then discarded. What made it even harder to accept was that this wasn't the result of bad box office numbers or a string of flops. It was a creative decision. The producers wanted a new direction, a grittier, younger Bond, one that would reflect a post-9th of September world. Brosnan had been too smooth, too elegant, too refined for this new vision. In came Daniel Craig, a talented actor, no doubt, but a stark departure from Pierce's style. However, some said it was because of negotiation disagreements behind the scenes, claiming that Pierce demanded a lot of money to return one more time. Regardless, the betrayal stung. Pierce had carried the franchise through its revival. He had been the face of the brand, the heart of the story, the reason many people came back to the theater. He had taken risks, both physically and artistically, to make Bond his own. And yet, he was let go without so much as a farewell scene. In interviews that followed, Pierce tried to remain gracious, but the pain of losing something that was beyond professional was visible. For a while, he struggled, creatively, emotionally, and mentally. He described the aftermath as a fog of confusion, anger, and disappointment. And yet, through the fog, Brosnan kept moving. He returned to smaller, more intimate roles. He took on parts that allowed him to stretch as an actor. Films like The Matador, Seraphim Falls, and The Ghostwriter. Slowly, he rebuilt. He even started his own production company, Irish Dreamtime, and produced his small yet interesting movie, Evelyn, based on a true story. Even though Pierce enjoys the freedom of being in charge of his hours, he once admitted that he missed it, the action, the adrenaline, the larger-than-life nature of the franchise. But most of all, he missed being part of something bigger, something that inspired people and reminded them of strength and class and cool under pressure. Something that made him feel like he still had purpose after everything life had taken from him. That role had given him a lot more than fame. To lose it in such a cold and abrupt way felt like losing family all over again. But after losing the role that once saved him, who now would save Pierce Brosnan? Another love story. After Pierce went through the kind of grief that empties a man from the inside out, he was almost certain he would not find love again. That was when Keely Shea Smith came into his world. She was a journalist when they met, and she fell in love with his persona beyond the scenes. Keely became the soothing balm to his fresh wounds, filling his world with laughter again. And she didn't just stand by him, she held him up and led him out of his ruins. The duo got married in 2001, 10 years after Pierce became a widower. They connected instantly and loved each other so loudly. Their love didn't come without battles. Keely faced her own deeply personal challenges, especially in the years following their marriage in 2001. She gave birth to 2 sons, Dylan and Paris. But motherhood took an immense toll on her body, causing her to gain a lot of weight. The physical changes weren't kind, at least not by Hollywood's harsh standards, and the tabloids, as cruel as ever, took aim. They called her names and kept making references to her looks before she became a mother. This time, though, Pierce was not the quiet party. He clapped back at the media. He praised her openly and without apology, calling her the most beautiful woman in his life, the love of all his days. He never missed a chance to remind the world that Keely is more than her body, more than her image. With time, their love has only deepened. In 2024, they celebrated their 23rd wedding anniversary. Pierce marked it the way he always does, with a public tribute, sharing a photo and a caption that felt like poetry. "Thank you for the love, my love, of these past 23 years." He gives her flowers not just on anniversaries but in the way he looks at her. Even after 2 decades, they now split their time between Malibu and Hawaii, surrounded by nature, by art, by the quiet joy they built together. Pierce paints. He writes. He smiles again, not because he's forgotten the pain, but because he's survived it. He once saved the world on screen, but in real life, it was Keely who saved him. Do you think this is the happily ever after meant for Pierce? Have you ever had to say a tough goodbye to a loved one? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.